Greetings and salutations, and welcome back to the AniMEN podcast, episode 9, the show where we talk about all things anime like men. My name is Craze, and with me as always is the luck of the Irish, Raven. You're back from your trip. How was it?
Oh my god, it was so great. Like, people say there are 50 shades of green or something like that in Ireland, and they're not lying. Like, it is just so lush. It is beautiful. I think we did it right. We started in Dublin, and what a cool place. Definitely similar to, if there are any people from Dublin listening, take this with a grain of salt, but kind of like any other European city. But then we rented a car and drove out to Galway, and it was beautiful there. It's right on the water. The little waterway that goes through the city feeds out into the Atlantic Ocean, and there's live music every night. You just walk into a pub and someone with a guitar is just playing live music. It's beautiful. And we kind of drove around, making stops along the way, both from Dublin to Galway and then back and into the little towns. And everyone's just so friendly. You hop into a pub and they're just like so happy to see you. You fill up at a gas station and they're like, "Oh, I guess that would be gas for you. Here we call it petrol." And you haven't even opened your mouth, but they just know, here's an American. It was the coolest. Probably, I have anxiety, so getting a rental car was very anxiety provoking, but if you can deal with it and take your meds, I think that's the right way to do it.
At the same time,
have a rental car.
And driving at the same time. I'm glad you had a great time. I hopefully had some pictures I can throw up here while we talk about it. So I'm glad you had a good time. Did you have some good hard liquor?
Yeah. So we, again, another thing that we did right is, we cheaped out on the flight. So we got in at like 5 a.m. Ireland time, which was horrible, but we had a really nice hotel. Actually, the one that Joe Biden, our president, stayed in when he visited Ireland. Of course, we didn't have the accommodations that he had. His were probably much nicer, I would hope. But, we got there at 5 a.m. They're like, "We don't have a room for you, but we're also not just going to throw you out onto the street or let you deal with this on your own. Here's like 3 free French press coffees. Here's a bunch of pastries." Like they even eventually just sent us in to go get breakfast for free.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was just like so accommodating. And then what we did right about it is, so we were so tired and we were grumpy. And then we waited all that time. And then the room still wasn't ready, but we had booked a tour of the Jameson distillery. They would say Jameson in Ireland. That was probably the right move, because after a few shots of Jameson, we were just like, okay, we can fuck with this. And then we made our way back. Our hotel room was ready and we were off having a great time in Ireland. But yeah, maybe if you're thinking about it, don't cheap out on the flights and land at 5 a.m. because no one's happy with that scenario.
Did they have your hotel ready later that day, like in the afternoon?
Yeah. So check-in is technically at 3. And then with our credit card, we can get an early check-in at noon, but that's subject to room availability. So it's like, we'll put you on the short list, but if we don't have a room ready, then, sorry, you're out of luck. You'll have to check in at 3 like everybody else. So
you just had all your luggage, you were holding on to your luggage while you're doing all. When was the tour? Was that in the morning?
No, that was at 2. So we spent 9 hours in a hotel lobby.
Wow.
More or less, give or take.
Taking a micro nap?
Yeah. Probably micro sleeps like all of our great American truckers out there,
Mm-hmm.
But it was fine. It worked out. I wouldn't do that way again, but
give me some ideas for when I do my honeymoon eventually.
Yes.
So
yes,
still thinking about doing just like the road trip thing, because my wife really wants to go to Salem, Massachusetts, just to see the graveyards and stuff. Like I think I said that in the last episode, but she just loves just walking in a graveyard and just seeing all the old ones, because we have one here and they only have like the oldest, I think, headstone is from like 1890 something. So and you can barely read it. That might be the way we go in the future.
Yeah.
I still want to go to, the Shire and stuff for her so she can see New Zealand and but that's like a big dream. That's thinking too big for me. So
Right.
I'm glad you had a great time with Ireland. And anything else happen when you got back?
Yeah. Oh my God. So I don't know if you had much to deal with the Canada fires and the smoke, but
I think we have a little bit of it up north, but I don't think it's that bad over here.
Oh, good.
I can only imagine how bad it is over there, though.
Oh my God. It was kind of bad. And this is for the part 3 of my update, as I'm in Ohio right now, but it was kind of bad in Ohio. It was pretty bad in Philadelphia, where my wife's family is. And then in New York City on Wednesday, but the 8th, the 7th, one of those days, New York City got to be the most polluted air quality in the entire world because of the smoke from Canada.
Oof.
And you know us New Yorkers, we like to be the best at everything, even when it's the worst. So, we were like, should we pat ourselves on the back or should we get the fuck out of here? I don't know. That's a tough one. But we were the best of the worst for a brief moment in time in air quality. So yay.
You can put that on the welcome sign when you go into New York City.
Yeah.
Is that why you're in Ohio right now? It's just so you get away from the NYC stuff, or?
No, that's actually a great transition, though. Let me just. So my parents live in Ohio, in Delaware, Ohio. I grew up here in the Dayton area, but they actually went to France, and so they were like, we would like one of the kids to watch the house. So I volunteered, and Rachel and I actually drove from Philly, and now we're watching the house, which is super fun.
Glad you just volunteered willingly. Is it just to watch the house and like animals and stuff?
Yeah, so they have 2 dogs, and then we drove 7.5 hours from Philly to with our 2 dogs. So it's a house full of dogs, which is just so much fun. And miraculously, they all actually get along for the most part. Pico kind of came in hot when we first walked across the threshold and scared my parents' dogs into hiding under their bed, which I'm like, this is your house. Like,
Pico's the alpha now.
Yeah. So, but eventually they all kind of got along, and it's working out pretty nice. But and it's a nice little break from the city. A lot of driving, but we actually the reason I was a little bit late for this recording is we were driving back from my hometown, Dayton, and I took my wife to Marion's Pizza, and she didn't like it, but I still claim that is the best pizza in the world. But she was not impressed. So,
was it too dry? Was it?
No,
I don't know.
It's like a Dayton style pizza. So the first thing is, like, they serve it on cardboard. So it's just like the bottom of the pizza box, but they serve it on cardboard. It's very flat. And there's not really a crust around it. Like, it's very, very thin. And they cut it into little squares, which I like a lot. And really, honestly, I know it's been probably at least a decade since I've had it, but the taste has not changed in all these years. Like, nothing about Marion's has really changed. And that's kind of comforting to me, coming back to my hometown that has changed so much and grown, and to have this one place that it's just, wow, that's just how I remember it. Kind of nice.
Yeah, it is. I'm glad you like square pizza. I actually do like square pizza. I can't really tout my pizza in Colorado because I don't think we have good pizza, but we have a Domino's in town. So whenever I swear to God, every time I try to order a pizza, I try to request it as square cut, and they don't do it. And then like I get there and they're like, we have to redo your pizza. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because we did pie cut. And I'm like, just give me the damn pizza. I'm here. Just let me suffer. Whatever. I like pie cut, so I'm glad. But yeah, pizza's good. Well, anything else? I mean, it sounds like you did a lot of driving from Ireland to, when you get back to NYC and now Ohio. So, man, you must have a lot of, personal days off.
No, I mean, I took 1 day off, 2 days off for the Ohio trip at the start and the end. And then I'm working remotely for the rest of it, which is kind of nice, and not something that would typically be allowed. But I was just like, well, someone's got to watch my parents' house. Can we please work something out? And we could. And then I just got to, I'm at about 3.5, maybe on the cusp of 4 years at my company. And once you hit 3 years, your vacation and sick days go up by like 5 each. Whoa. So the first 2 or 3 years, I was just like, by Christmas, I was like, I don't know if I can make all of this work, all this time off. And now I'm like, well, I have way too many. What do I do with them?
I think mine just stops at 14 days. And then I think three personal days. But that's just, wherever, in the industry I'm in, obviously. So yeah. I'm glad your work's way accommodating in that front, because I know mostly of your stuff is just online. So that's good. So
yeah.
Are you heading back later this week back to NYC?
Actually, next weekend. So we originally weren't going to be able to see my parents at all, actually. Like, they were going to have to hire like rover dog sitters on the front end and the back end of us kind of watching the house and the dogs. But we decided to stay an extra day so that, because we were like, this is stupid. Like, we're going to be here for like a week and we're not even going to see you guys. So we're off on Monday for Juneteenth, and then I'm going to work remotely on I get 1 remote day a week. So I'm just going to switch it from Wednesday to Tuesday so we can kind of have that buffer to get to Philly and then get back to New York and get back to the office. So
yeah, still more driving ahead of you.
Yeah.
Especially with dogs, man. I can't. I'm so glad. That's the one thing I'm glad whenever I get to doing my honeymoon is I won't have to bring the dogs, because they can be here. Because I can only imagine how many pee breaks you have to do. And
oh my gosh, yeah.
Some dogs are they get anxiety just being in a car. So like our dogs are pugs, obviously, and they freak out. They're just howling or barking, and just like Otis in particular, our oldest pug, just whines. So
no.
Yeah, but he's already, we love him. I'm looking at him right now. He's looking at me like, we talking bad mouth about me? I'm glad you guys had a good time. So whenever I get to mine, I'll probably talk about it. But I had a couple things going on, not as crazy as yours though, from driving and stuff. But the charity stream went well. I was talking about it last episode. I had to change your plans halfway, that day when we were doing it. The other content creator I was working with that for the stream, he had to back out because of a family health matter. And I was like, okay, wow. I already made it. I mean, I was telling him, you know what? I made a commitment to do this stream and I'm still going to do it. And that's okay. I had to change a different game. And so I just played Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom that day. And I changed our price, our goal to $100. And we went past that, which is great. Within like 5 minutes, I wasn't even done with the cutscene, and everyone was like donating $20. And I was like,
awesome.
I know, it was so great. It was something I've always wanted to do. Obviously, I said, and it really meant a lot that a lot of people came out for the stream, which I haven't streamed in over a year, just to do something nice and something that matters to me and to our dogs, because we rescued them. And I wanted to give that back to the community in our county. And so it went so well. It went above my expectation. I was thinking like, okay, we're just going to hit $20 maybe, or 50 at best, not 100. And I think at the end of the night we hit $171. So it went above, and I'm already going to be donating as soon as I get my next paycheck, because I was doing reward tiers to do certain things like, okay, $1 I'll shout you out, $5 we'll build something in Tears of the Kingdom beyond per your request, and then $20 I'll match. So we had several $20, and I'm also going to donate $20 for each person that donated $20.
Wow.
So I'm being very generous, and I didn't know we were going to get so many $20, but that's fine because it's going to a good cause. So at the end of the day, I can't be too upset, even if my wallet's a little low. But I'm waiting. I'm just slowly saving up a little bit more money so I can just donate the whole thing all together. So great charity. I can't wait to do more and maybe do different games in the future with other content creators that we have lined up with. I'm mixing things up a bit, but I got my tattoo also finished last weekend. I think I already sent you pictures of it, but
I saw.
I got it all filled in. My Last of Us tattoo of Ellie's tattoo from Last of Us Part 2. Really good colors that my artist was doing, and colored in the moth and the ferns and stuff. I'm at the itching phase, so if you hear this sound, that's me slapping my arm because it's itchy. It's all done peeling. It's just lotion now, but it's still itchy. And then Taylor got some suit sprites from Studio Ghibli. So
yeah, I saw that.
She wants to get more for the arm, but I was like, well, for getting my whole tattoo done was I had to do it in increments, obviously, with payments and stuff with my artist. So, getting the line work done was over a month ago, and then filling this in. And then I was like, I can only maybe give you 2 or 3 suit spreads right now, and maybe fill it out later. So it looks really great. They're holding the candies and stuff. So there'll be pictures, obviously, on the video podcast form of this. So, and then my wife surprised me with Konosuba coins, which I forgot to mention last episode. And I sent you pictures of those. Those are really cute and cool. They're just on my desk right now of, the Konosuba team of Darkness and Megumin and Aqua and Kazuma, just with IOU coins, and they have really funny things on it. So I just thought it was a really cool little anime merch, swag that I have on my desk. So I just thought I'd mention that. My wife's awesome. Yeah. She just thought, I love Konosuba. I'm actually currently rewatching it just because it's like one of those things I just leave on in the background. Very nice and just relaxing to watch and funny. So, but yeah, that's all that we've been up to. And let's head on to the topic of this episode. What is that?
So our topic is remakes. And whether you love them or hate them, it's become pretty fucking clear they aren't going anywhere. From Hollywood to TV to the wild world of video games. There's just no escaping them, even if you can't help but wonder, who in the hell asked for this? And that fact is just as true in the anime world, so we've taken it upon ourselves to flex our burly AniMEN muscles.
Ooh.
Oh, burly! And get down to business with some anime remakes that we think are worth discussing. Per usual, we'll talk about a few specific examples and then give our thoughts on a more general topic of what criteria we think separates the good remakes from the bad. As always, we encourage you to play along at home and comment or email us your thoughts. Quick side note. Live action adaptations are off limits, as we'll be devoting a whole nother episode to that can of worms.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this. I do want to note, and I forgot to mention it to you, I did a little bit things differently on my decisions. So when we get to it, obviously, but I think you should go first with your first choice. And then we'll go to mine, and I'm going to do a little things differently on my first choice that I wanted to talk about. So I'm kind of putting you on the spot. So
I'm excited.
Yeah, but let's go with your first pick on a remake.
Okay, so my remake is Evangelion new theatrical version, and this is streaming on Amazon Prime. The original series is from 1995, and the remake is... Well, the different movies, or whatever you want to call them, came out 2007 to 2021. And there are 4 of them. And they're all like an hour and a half to 2 hours long. So it's much more condensed, but it's also, you're sitting down for a longer period of time than just like a 23, 26 minute episode. But what I like about this is I actually learned a lot about like the remake process or the adaptation process just by kind of trying to wrap my mind around this more condensed version. And one of the things that I think that I learned is like the first thing is my attention span is not what it used to be. So like, I actually really liked this version of Evangelion that was a much more condensed format because, my attention span just isn't holding up. I remember going from long episodic anime. My sisters compared them to soap operas like DBZ and Naruto, and then down to 26 episode anime. And now I struggle to get through 12 or 13 episodes of a season. But the condensed format is both good and bad. You literally have less time to develop things and flesh them out properly, which means you have to make some crucial creative decisions to get it right. You can't just stick to the script of the old and squish it like an accordion. You can try to get the same note to come out, but it just won't. And I actually realized this with a TV series adaptation of The Alienist. The novel is one of my favorites. At first, I was annoyed by the differences in development between the book and the TV series, but then I realized the writers had to make adjustments to certain parts of the original narrative to fit a shorter format. Things developed the way they did in the book because the length allowed for those specific developments. Change the length, and you have to make some changes to the narrative. We see this all the time in film adaptations like Harry Potter, and we see this as well in the Evangelion remake. So I have an example here from around 8 minutes in on episode 1.11. And this exchange is kind of more problematic development-wise in the English dub than it is in the Japanese dub. Though it's still like, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around like what they're trying to convey in this scene, even in the original Japanese. But basically, Misato and Shinji are in the car. She's just picked him up and they're driving to Nerve. And she says, "So you have issues with your father. We have that in common." And Misato says this with almost no establishment from the scene that she should be able to pick up on this. We see Shinji's painful memories, but unless she's clairvoyant, she doesn't. And in the English dub, Shinji says, "He must have had a good reason to ask me to come. I wonder what it is." And that conveys a little bit of uncertainty, but certainly not enough for Misato to say, "Oh, you must have a strained relationship with your father." Whereas in the Japanese version of it, he says there must be a reason, or he wouldn't have written, which does kind of convey that more, because it's like, okay, yeah, if you and your father are on the outs and the only time he communicates with you is when he really needs something and he's in dire need, but he wouldn't want to check up on you or whatever else. Sure, I guess that accomplishes that, and the original Japanese certainly does a better job of hinting at the strained relationship, but this is a really important detail in the series, and for them to just kind of skate past this and not really establish it well enough for us to get that in that scene seems like a missed opportunity, and it demonstrates a pitfall inherent in condensing the original. You've still got to make sure things are developed sufficiently enough for your audience to follow along, and you can't just rely on the crutch of viewers having seen the original, especially for something this big, the fucked up relationship between Shinji and his dad. It's a major plot point, and you've got to get that revelation right. And I'm sad to say, especially in the English dub of this, it was sloppy and forced. But the main takeaway for me, at least, is that changes to the narrative in a condensed remake aren't inherently wrong or bad. The writers are professionals, and most of the time, the changes they make are necessary and stay true to the spirit of the original narrative, or at least the good remakes do this. And that's kind of my first point, is a good remake, especially if it's a condensed format, they do need to make some changes, because you can't just rely on the narrative developing the same way. It's not the same length. You have to kind of pick and choose and think about what might need to change so the spirit of the narrative can still shine through and you can stay faithful to that.
When you're doing something like a movie, you only have so much time, right, with like 2.5 to 2.5 hours at best, and you got to have to, yes, condense it, but you could still tell that narrative in a interesting way. It might be cutting some of the original source material, but
right,
it sounds like that's a good thing for the Evangelion remake. I mean, I haven't been able to watch this stuff fully because I watched a lot of it in my early days on Toonami when that was going on, or at least the 26 episode original run. I just never got a chance to watch the movies and obviously the spin-off thing. And I know Netflix now has an easier, like, I think they have the licensing on most of this stuff for Evangelion. So it's easier to watch. But it sounds like you watched it on, what was it, Amazon?
Yeah, so Netflix has the 26 episode Evangelion from 1995, and then Amazon Prime has the condensed kind of movie format of the four of the quote unquote remake. But I think that, this was just me nitpicking that first example. I think for the most part, they did a fabulous job of kind of condensing it down. But that is the risk that you have, is you have a shorter format and you still have to find ways to stretch it and give it enough room for some of those really significant developments. And you don't have as much road to work with to get there. And And so you really have to be mindful of that. Most of the time they did an amazing job. That was just one place that really stuck out to me. Like, wait, we were supposed to pick up on this, and she just magically understands this from this very vague kind of hint at it. I just think that could have been developed better, especially for something that big, kind of underpinning the whole narrative. Shinji's relationship with his father is just that is such an important detail, and to not do that justice in that very important scene, I just was like, wow, really? How'd you miss this?
I really love that you went with how the theatrical movie versions can improve upon a remake. That kind of goes into my first topic and how it can improve, but also the TV format of like a 24, 26 episode count run of a series can also ruin it because they have so much to cover in such a short time that they want to do. I really love that you chose how like movies can improve upon a remake, and it's several movies, right? For the movie remake, it's several. You said it was like 3 or 4.
Yeah, it's 4 of them.
And yeah, I think that's great to divide it up rather than shove it all into one movie. I think that's a really good idea, and actually goes into my next topic, unless you have anything else you want to say.
No, I think that about does it for Evangelion.
Okay, well, perfect. Evangelion, go watch. If you want to watch the original, it's on Netflix, obviously, and then you were saying Amazon has those remakes. So yeah, check them out on there. My pick, which I'm going to segue into what I really liked about you. That's why I chose my first topic, or my first choice, is because I wanted to discuss how bad a remake can be for the OG source material as well, along with how the movies kind of do it, like a movie format can do it justice as well. And I didn't put that in my notes here, but I really loved your examples there. But my first choice is Berserk. I love Berserk to death. It's one of my favorite reads. It's one of the most important mangas of all time to a lot of people, including myself. But the series has never had a true anime adaptation that it deserves. It's received multiple anime adaptations over the 30 years, trying to translate this bloody epic fantasy. And while there are some good moments here and there with those adaptations, it's never truly adapted this legendary series properly. It was first adapted back in 1993 with 24 episodes covering the early arcs of the series, with the legendary Golden Age arc included as well. That's the most famous one. If you ever hear about Berserk, the Golden Age arc is the best one, and it still is to this day. The series was well received, of course, but with its short length of content, sorry, I'm slurring my words because I have a little bit of alcohol in me, it left so much of it unadapted. Also, the graphic content that the series is best known for was toned down, along with some of its story being cut to tell a coherent story with its short 24 episode count. The Golden Age arc would later be readapted into a 3-part movie in 2012 with updated artwork, animations that improved this arc to its heightened status that it's known for. Later on, in 2016, Berserk received yet another adaptation, but this time it continued the story where the 1993 anime left off, along with the movies as well. So it covers past the Golden Age arc. And it only covered, for 2 seasons, an arc and a half. But what I think made this second attempt fail spectacularly is that it was an ugly mess filled with its poor blend of 2D and CGI animation. I'll probably have some pictures up, but this led to scenes looking so unnatural, awkward, and downright appealing. What I love most about what Berserk is, it's so beautiful. Like, the author, who is now passed away, there are scenes in his manga that are just like wallpapers I would love to have in my room. Everything's filled from page to page. And I'm going to continue on with the history. A year ago, we got a memorial edition of the Golden Age arc, which is basically the movie cut down into 12 episodes, 3 movies. It was just to honor the author's passing in 2021. And that was the last time we ever saw anything of Berserk. Now, from what I've told you, it sounds like it's unadaptable. And from the history of what I've given so far, It sounds like that, obviously, but I think it still can be adapted properly with the right team behind it, of course, because this is such an amazing manga that needs to be shown to more people. Obviously, it has a cult following to this day, and we wouldn't have video games, we wouldn't have other anime without this movie, or sorry, without this manga being so influential to Dark Souls, to Final Fantasy VII. I know I'm talking about video games, but it's true. We wouldn't have most of the stuff you see today without Berserk as its inspiration. The current landscape of where we are right now in 2013 is so vastly different from where Berserk got its first adaptation back in 1993. And for example, like the gore and violence, I know it's not as necessary for a show because the story is so great even without it, but I feel like it's an aesthetic of what makes Berserk. Like, right. I don't think the gore and violence to this day wouldn't be as censored as much as it was back in the early 1990s. With that alone, I think we can see a more faithful adaptation of this beloved series while keeping its horror and bloody violence at the same time. And then, as much as I've grown to appreciate CGI animation more, especially with shows like Beastars and Trigun Stampede. Those are amazing examples of what a CGI animation can do. I think we're there now, but he's, like I said, the artwork is so amazing. I just feel like it doesn't express his actual artwork with how with CG animation. And with the example of what they did in 2016 with that, I think it doesn't work. Like, yes, it's going to be a lot more animation to do, but I think it's going to be all better, all the more for it. So I just wanted to go in a different direction here with my first pick because I really loved your talk about the movies, because I really think the Golden Age arc did such a good job with dividing its movies up into 3 parts, because like those chapters are so long in the Golden Age arc in the manga. It's like 90 chapters long and it's like almost 50 pages each. I mean, I have those deluxe edition books, and I think most of the Golden Age arc covers like 5 of those books, and they're so good. But with the movies, I think it was able to cover everything in those 3 movies. And yeah. I think that's a good way to approach it. Like, even if we have to do movies going forward with Berserk, rather than 24 episode seasons, I'm all for that. And instead, what they did in 2016, they did I think 12 episode counts, and it didn't cover that much. And like I said, they only did an arc and a half for 2 seasons, and that's just not the way to do it. And I really think the movie format, for at least for this kind of this kind of manga to be adapted, I think is the right approach. Right. I don't know if you have a lot of history with Berserk, but I want to throw it to you, obviously, about your thoughts on the Berserk approach that I was taking.
I don't have too much experience with Berserk. I have a lot of friends who, again, another one that people keep pushing to me. But what I love about your example is that you have kind of wrapped up in this nice package kind of examples of good and bad ways to go about remakes. And I think that it's so illustrative of kind of what we're talking about. And I think what you're kind of approaching here is this point of, when we consider doing a remake of a beloved series or even just an adaptation, we have to think about the format. And I think for a while we were kind of pigeonholed or limiting ourselves with this. Okay, well, we have to do like 26 episode season for this arc, and it has to be formatted that way. And it's like from what you're saying, I mean, the Golden Age arc having these 3 movies was a much better format than this, 26 episode season or, what a 13 episode season would have been. And I think that's really important to think about. We're not limited to just anime seasons. We can think about movies. We can think about, other formats. And I think that's what's really shining through from what you brought up with Berserk.
Yes, that's exactly what I was trying to convey. And I'm glad that you saw it too. I still say, you gotta just read it. I would say read it. I even got my wife into it about a year ago, and she read all of the books I've been buying, and she's loved the whole thing. And I've shown her clips of like their adaptations, and it's just not good. I wish this deserves the proper anime remake. And whether that's a movie format, like I said, I'm all for it. I feel like where we are now in the industry for anime, I feel like we can get that. But that is mine, Berserk. You can watch this on Crunchyroll, and I think at least the 2016 version of that pseudo second attempt remake. And you can watch the movies that I just talked about that came out in 2012 on Netflix. All three of them are on there. I tried my best to find where you can find the original like 1993 version, but there's nowhere I'm noticing other than like buying it right out, digitally. So right. There's no streaming available. I could be, if I find it later, I'll, correct myself in the next episode. But yep, that's Berserk. What is your second pick, sir?
Okay, my second pick is Nejima? ? Exclamation mark.
That's important.
Yeah, very important. The grammar is very important here. But so the original series run is 2005 and the remake is 2006 to 2007. So not much time has passed between the two. And I was bad. So I tried to find where you could watch this. And there is an article from 2021 claiming that you can watch it on Hulu. So if that is true and you can watch the remake on Hulu, great. I couldn't find anything about where to watch the original. That was at least true in 2021 for the remake. I'm not sure if that's still true now, but hopefully it is because this is a lot more lighthearted than my first one. It is probably one of the funniest and but still like true to form remakes I have ever seen or just anime series in general. And what I really like about this pick is that it's a nice pairing with our combined final pick in that the trajectory from the original series to the remake is the exact opposite from a series we'll kind of tackle together later on in this episode. Whereas our final pick takes the remake as an opportunity to flesh out the characters and develop them in much more serious ways that make the series overall a little more complex and dark, while also trying to be faithful to the manga. The remake series Nejima is much sillier than its predecessor and veers off course from the manga. And what this illustrates is that there isn't a formula for making a successful remake. On the contrary, both approaches work really well for what they're trying to accomplish. And one thing I really like about the Nejima remake is that we get less blatant fan service. Very much still a product of its time. We do get some, but it's toned down significantly. And there are even moments where the writers play on our expectations by making us think we're about to have a fan service moment, only to dupe us and make us look foolish. This was such a smart move to still engage with a rampantly common trope in anime of this era, while also calling out the audience for being unreasonably lewd. And this is pretty much par for the course with the general tone of the remake. It is very much a parody. Nejima engages with popular culture references in smart, insightful ways, and even parodies the original series at parts. The remake even adds a narrator, which allows for some excellent opportunities for the characters to break the fourth wall and engage with how the seemingly objective narrator characterizes events. And probably my favorite update we see in Nejima is the fact that Asuna is obsessed with finding chupacabras. I don't know why, but I'm absolutely tickled by this character development. The retelling adds some delightfully absurd elements like this to the other characters as well that resulted in so much laughter, at least on my part. And also, Mr. Yamada, aka Yamada-san, is probably the best filler character I have ever seen. He's a librarian at the school, and he announces himself every time by saying, "I am Yamada!" And we'll often see him falling into obvious traps, which is always a solid hoot and a half. And fun fact, just a side note, I am Yamada popped into my head randomly one day, and I was like, which anime is that from? And I landed on School Rumble for some reason because it's very similar vibes to Nejima. So if you like School Rumble, if you find it hilarious, you'll probably really like Nejima as well. And it wasn't until we started working on this podcast episode that I remembered it was from this. And finally, even though the remake came out only 1 year later, the animation looks so much better.
It's so interesting to see that a remake happened so soon from its original series run. I never watched Negima, but it sounds right up my alley because I'm a sucker for funny anime that was even especially like slice of life funny, rom-com stuff.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Love is War and Konosuba's great, but like this sounds right up my alley. I'm just surprised it got another adaptation so quickly. Is there like a history to why that is? Because it's like a year apart from each other as opposed to like 30 or 15 years later, like some usually are?
That's a really great question. So I couldn't really find too much on that. I just know that the original anime adaptation was very faithful. It kind of stuck to the same tone. And I think this other studio just really loved the general idea of the series and really just wanted to take it in a different direction, in a much lighter, kind of more funny direction. The first one it has, again, a lot of fan service. It's pretty lewd, actually, but it is like it's magical girls and this teacher, this child prodigy teacher at this academy, and it gets kind of much more serious. And they were like, well, we like this a lot, but we really want to do something fun with this, and they did, and I'm really glad they did. I want to do more research on why it happened in such quick succession, but a lot of it, I think, had to do with, a general love for the premise, but just wanting to take it in a slightly different direction.
I think that's great to see that there was a team out there that's willing to even alter the original source material and put their own spin to it. I think that's a really cool idea to, I guess, enhance a remake per se, especially with something like this, with its fourth wall breaking and adding more comedy to it than just sticking to the original source material. I think that's a cool idea and a good approach to how some people can, tackle a remake with, whether that's an anime or, video games, which we can get in, we'll probably discuss later. But yeah, I think that's a really cool idea. One thing that comes to mind is like Trigun Stampede's recent run with Trigun.
Yeah.
Like it's an entirely different story with its 3D animation as opposed from the original source material. So I like seeing that they can take a risk like that, and it doesn't it's not. I'm sure some people were upset, because usually you want to stick with the OG and not have filler, as
sure,
a lot of especially shonen does a lot, because they always catch up to the manga, or they have to just half-ass it and just make up their own stories. But I just like that these people can make their own spin on things, and it's so well received. And yeah, Trigun Stampede's one that I think of dearly, that I can still enjoy the original series and then really enjoy the remake. And it sounds like it's something like this too, where you can still enjoy both. That's a really cool approach. Anything else? That's all I have to say about it. I still got to watch it. I'm going to add that to my list. I'm all for it. So you got me convinced. Anything else you want to say about it?
I think that's about it for that one. I'd like to hear your next pick.
I had to talk about this one because I have to think. Well, first of all, I have to thank my wife for this one, because she got me into this series after we met, and that is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, baby, which is all on Netflix. The original series run that they attempted on the first adaptation was in 1993, and it was an OVA of just one of the arcs from JoJo, and it was only 13 episodes, and that's not the way to do it.
No.
Especially cutting 2 arcs before then, and then it's halfway through. It's halfway through the arc, the best arc, really, too. It's so weird, but they did a remake in 2012, and it's still ongoing. I actually, funny enough, just watched part 6 last week and binged through that whole thing. The best thing I could describe of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure in 3 words, which you would probably agree with too, is Japanese Looney Tunes.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to describe the plot of this show is harder than explaining its pedigree in the anime industry and manga side of things. It's no stretch to say this is one of the most famous and influential mangas ever made. We wouldn't have other manga series or even anime series like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Zatch Bell. That's called. I love Zatch Bell. Or even Persona, to name a few, without JoJo as its inspiration. Like I said, I'm a very young JoJo fan, as I didn't get into the series about over a year ago, thanks to my wife. And like I said, we just finished Stone Ocean, and so I'm going into this a little bit more fresh. what drew me into the bizarre adventure of this series, pun intended, is the most of this was its distinctive approach of its story and its characters. Rather than just tell a story that graphs the progress of a single protagonist through its journey in the manga, JoJo divides itself into separate stories, each of which follows a different member of the Joestar family through the generations of its bloodline. So we start all the way back in the 1800s, and part 6 right now is in 2012, baby. So it's crazy to see like them just divide the work up, but it makes it so unique because it's so rewarding for anyone watching the whole thing. And you can still appreciate each arc as standalone because it's a full-fledged arc of a story with this certain Joestar member. And if you watch it all, it can be admired as a single sprawling narrative all together at the same time. I never watched the OVAs, and it only covered like a fraction of its best story, that being Stardust Crusaders. And I probably never will because we were given the best adaptation in 2012, thanks to the animated studio DP, David Productions. There are plenty of anime adaptations that don't do the source material justice, but what I think David Productions gets about JoJo is that they handled every season so far of this anime, so I appreciate that. And then they didn't like stop. But like they get JoJo. They understand it, from the art style to the comedy to the bonkers, bizarre adventure that is JoJo, of course. I also can't even talk about JoJo without talking about the music in this show. The music is such an integral part of this show's experience, as the names of many of its characters are named after music artists like AC/DC, or in the recent part 6 of Stone Ocean, they have one for FF, for Foo Fighters. It's so creative, and I think the author just loves his music. Its OPs and EPs are a love letter to the series as a whole, as it adds a slew of Easter eggs for hardcore JoJo fans to spot. Also, its creative use of popular English songs for its EPs are brilliant. Like, for example, and I'm sure you know the meme, The Roundabout from Yes.
Oh my God.
Which you've probably heard or seen to death a million times in memes, thanks to JoJo starting that trend. I had to talk about this. I love what they did with this remake. And they stuck true with the art style and the whole, and they still have so many chapters left. They have like 3 or 4 more parts they could still do, but they could honestly stop right here at part 6, because it actually gets even more crazy, because they kind of do a reboot in part 7 per se by like resetting the whole thing again. So it could be even another remake. So I don't know if you have any history with JoJo, but I'm throwing it over to you about your opinions on JoJo and my thoughts on it.
No, I mean, again, another series that you and countless others keep telling me to watch, and just one that I really need to get into. I mean, the way you describe it, especially like this tie to like popular musical artists and stuff like that. It's such a cool thing. And I really like this idea that there's not like one like protagonist that we're just following all the way to the end, but it kind of branches out. I like broad, sweeping, branching narratives like that. I think they make for much more interesting character studies, and definitely provide better developments. Usually, not hard and fast, but usually you see much more kind of impactful, innovative character developments, because you're not requiring your audience to bet on one horse and that's it till the very end. And I think that's just such the better approach when it comes to that kind of stuff. You ready to move on to our final pick?
Yes, our final pick. I'll drum roll it, and you,
all right,
I guess just say what it is.
It's Fruits Basket.
No surprise there.
Which is a recent one for me. And another one, see, when people, every episode we have an anime where you're like, oh, what are your thoughts on this? I'm like, well, again, this is another one that people have been telling me time and time again to watch it. I do listen, just very slowly. Eventually, I will get to all of these anime and I will watch them. So don't give up on me. I'm not a lost cause. I do get to them eventually, and I'm so glad I got to this one. Original series run in 2001, remake series run 2019 to 2021, and again, you and my brother were both on my case to watch this, and I'm so glad I finally did. Toru's character is so heartwarming. I shed many a tear just watching her continue to exhibit unbelievable amounts of strength in the face of incredibly dire circumstances. I mean, she's living in a tent when we first meet her, and yet she takes care of herself and gets up for school every morning. I think if that were my life, I'd just say to heck with it all and devolve into a complete depresso martini. But Toru keeps going. Damn. And what I love about the remake is that it looks stunning compared to the original, which wasn't bad. But this is just a very stunning, beautiful rendition of, or, remake of the original. And the characters are much more fleshed out. We'll get into this in what makes a good remake section, but those two qualities are absolutely paramount in a successful remake. From the 2019 iteration, it also has the advantage of being able to adapt the entire manga. When the 2001 version came out, the team didn't have that benefit of a completed manga to work with. And what I love too is that the remake doesn't really change how sweet this show can be. That being said, the longer format that covers more of the manga delivers some incredibly sad and dark revelations about the central characters that the original just couldn't cover in its much shorter run. Unless we factor in time travel, then maybe they could get to it. But I think that the character who benefits the most from the remake treatment is Kyo, though I'd love to hear arguments for the other characters. But his storyline becomes so much more impactful due to a really nice fleshing out of his eventual fate as the 13th zodiac animal. Given the extra context, I found his rough exterior much easier to wrap my head around in the remake.
The 2001 version is great. It's so charming. It's so cute. But yeah, with the 2019 version, it has all the source material. It can go from there. It expands from, like you said, Kyo, and it even goes into more of the family's, issues of the Soma family. And you'll see that later on in the other seasons in the 2019 version. So it fleshes that out. It does get darker. It does get more complicated, compelling characters. Even I guess I would say the big bad, or who's the true villain of the show, and what are their motives and why they act the way they do. And I think you understand that character's motivations even by the end, and why they're doing the things that they do. It's one of the things I think I even said is that the parents in the show are so fucked up to their own kids, and it sucks. There's only one good parent, and that is Toru's mother. So yeah, but I just love that you're finally into Fruits Basket. From me countlessly berating you about it, your brother berating you about it, my wife slowly berating me about berating you about it. And I agree with everything you said. The remake is excellent, from adapting the whole source material, giving us the spin-off movie with Toru's parents, by the way, which I still eagerly. Oh, yeah. I can't wait for you to get to that one, and how much of a tissue box you go through. And the fact that they brought that back, most of the voice actors who portrayed these characters in 2001 over to the remake, is a nice honorable nod to the first adaptation. And you can totally hear the differences between them. It just feels like they all aged like fine wine. So the remake is more accurate to the source material. I think the 2001 version has a lovable charm to it and still draws fans to this day. And I will go, when we get into more of the topic of what makes a good anime remake, or a good remake, I feel like it's because of the first adaptation at the series. I think we wouldn't have this much of a popularity with this show if it didn't gain that over time, over 20 years, and it would have just faded away from obscurity. I think it's thanks to the 2001 adaptation that we were even given this opportunity to cover the whole thing and bring all the characters, all the voice actors back to reprise their roles. I think it's thanks to the fan base.
Oh, absolutely.
Series. That's all I have to say about it. Anything else?
No, I think we've covered a lot of anime, a lot of ground too.
Yeah. And I guess we'll just head on to our last topic of the episode, is what makes a good anime.
Okay. So I think for me, the gold standard in remakes,
And, I'm sure people will fight about this, but the gold standard has always been the Resident Evil 2 remake. I know. This is the AniMEN podcast. We should be talking about anime. But if we're considering this remake reboot obsession and specifically what separates the good from the bad, the RE2 remake just stands well above the rest in my estimation. I'm going to try to be objective as possible in my outlining of what makes this one so good. The first thing is a much needed facelift. If you're going to make a remake, why wouldn't you make it look better? This is kind of a gimme, but we've got to mention it. Whether you accomplish this like RE2 did by making massive improvements on the original character models, or you do like Live Alive with the enhanced 2.5D graphics, a remake absolutely has to improve on the visuals, or what's the fucking point? And I will say though, demakes throw an interesting wrench into this being a hard and fast rule. Honestly, I'd be interested to see what a demake would look like in the realm of anime. Like, imagine if we took a shiny new anime from the 2023 spring lineup and reimagined it in a classic art style like we see in Yu Yu Hakusho. That's gotta exist, and someone needs to show me where. And I think the next point is musical score that both improves on and updates the original, but also honors it. This is purely opinion. You could probably convince me with remakes that take more of an out with the old, in with the new approach, but I think remakes that don't pay a certain level of homage to the original in the musical score run the risk of alienating the OG fan base. Whether it's video games or anime, so much of what we fall in love with is the music, because our fond memories of the original experience are reactivated when we hear the starting notes from some of our favorite tracks. I mean, could you imagine a Naruto remake or reboot not having sadness and sorrow and Way of the Ninja as motifs? Blasphemy! Remakes that don't recognize this are doomed to fail in my book. And that's honestly the biggest strike for me against the RE2 remake. Once I learned you could opt for the original soundtrack, I paid no more mind to whatever the hell they tried to accomplish with the new musical score. Yikes.
Resident Evil 2.
Right, you can't do it without that.
No,
I mean,
exactly.
It's just not the same. It's not...
Like, literally, I'm currently going through Resident Evil 4 right now. Again, sorry to talk about video games, but like I'm going through the remake of that, and I bought the original soundtrack because it has the opening Resident Evil 4.
You gotta. Yes. You can't step away from that. It's just too iconic.
Exactly.
But I think the next point is better development. As French poet Paul Valéry famously put it, a work of art is never finished, only abandoned. And that is just as true for anime or video games. We don't love the originals and feel suspicion for any and all attempts at remakes because the originals were perfect. We know that at some point the hammer had to drop and things had to see the light of day, imperfections and all, and yet we fell in love with your imperfect work. A remake thus is an excellent opportunity to improve upon the storytelling and fleshings out in better, more impactful ways. The RE2 remake definitely does this, and I also see that happening in Fruits Basket. Things are darker and more twisted in the 2019 version of the anime, and the stakes are that much higher, as we discussed already. But here's where the fine line comes into play. As a creator, you absolutely should make creative choices to allow for better development of the original IP. It's kind of like the graphics and visuals. If you don't offer any improvements here, again, what's the fucking point? But it is a fine line between making necessary improvements to the storytelling and characterization and just adding inconsequential fluff. And here's where I'm going to get a lot of hate, but the latter sort of happened in the FF7 remake, in my opinion. Initially, I was excited that the Avalanche crew were going to see more screen time until I actually had to endure their superficial characterization. I mean, Wedge is basically just Choji Akimichi. Biggs is hardly any better. It's like the writers were putting their heads together over the task that they clearly didn't want to do and were like, think. What do people like? Do you think the kids still like Naruto? Which, yes, but all of these scenes just played out like shonen anime from 15 years ago, and nobody asked for that oddly specific trip down nostalgia lane. And this actually leads me to my next point. I understand that part of why remakes exist is because franchise creators are trying to increase their overall fan base and not just cater to their diehard loyal fans. I struggled with accepting this with the Final Fantasy VII remake because I honestly think they did too much in the way of trying to cater to new fans and not enough in showing some love to fans of the original game. But just as Square Enix has made it abundantly clear that they've moved on from me, I've moved on too. The game's just not for me, and that's okay. But drama aside, there needs to be enough of the old in the remake. That being said, it's not like there's a golden ratio for this, like 4 parts new content, 2 parts old. It just can't work that way. Whether it's including the original soundtrack or some of the original voice actors, we need subtle nods to the original, especially if you're remaking something universally beloved. It should go without saying too, but tread lightly. Fanboys and fangirls are not nice, especially on forums. And this could even be accomplished with little jokes and allusions to something that happened in the original. This especially works better if you're doing a remake where the original wasn't as faithful of an adaptation of the manga or whatever the source material may have been. If your goal is to be more faithful to the manga, you should still at least make subtle and loving references to scenes that maybe weren't as faithfully rendered in the original run. This tongue-in-cheek approach goes a long way toward letting your audience know, hey, we get that the original is important to you, but we're trying to get it right this time, or whatever the case may be.
I really love your analogy with the RE2 remake and how it sets a standard in your eyes on a good remake. I just love that. And I'm right behind you on that Final Fantasy front because that remake was just not for me either. I'll just stick to my 3-disc PS1 copy. Thank you very much. Which has all the content and instead of dividing it into 3 parts, which still, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But with that aside, I agree with a lot you said with the music, with the better developments. I understand that like a lot of these remakes are just for, yes, obviously, you know, the company is just, you know, they won't make rather making something new, they can just make something, you know, old and revamp it. And then obviously, you know, cover that material if they so wish to. What I love about remakes in video games or the anime space is that, thank you, I see it, is that it's blocking me shit. It was blocking me. The anime space is a chance to breathe new life into a series and attract more fans along the way. Like you said, it's the diehard fans, I think, though, that who are already on the series that gives these remakes, I think, a chance to even be attempted in the first place. And this will kind of go into what I've been watching, but the Sailor Moon comes to mind with its 1992 version, as it garnered this global love for the series, even though it failed as a proper adaptation in the first place. But over time, love and support probably helped in a way to give a second attempt at faithfully adapting the source material, like I just watched. And they even went back. Like I just wanted to just go on a tangent here, but like they even went back to the original 1992 version with the new dub voices. That did Crystal. I think I was mentioning in the last episode, but like they even went back and redid the dub and did not censor anything. So you can get the Uranus and Neptune love story without it being weird and awkward. So yeah. And I think the same can be said for Fruits Basket, not the censorship, but in the 2001 version is what brought a lot of people into that series in the first place. Like I was saying, with its story and with its compelling characters and its lovey, it just felt so charming on that first run. It's unfortunate they caught up to the manga production, of course, like we were talking about, and they had to do a half-ass ending with it. But I think with the cult following over the 20 years I think that's what breathed the, life into this and a second attempt for a remake. I feel like it's those. And I'm going off in a different direction than you, because I think you said a lot of things I agree with, but like, I feel like it's because of the fan base, I guess those hateful forums, if you want to go into these diehard people, they're the ones that are breathing life into these remakes. I think, without all the fan base, I don't think we would have a chance to see Fruits Basket in its entirety, Sailor Moon in its entirety. There's many others I'm failing to mention, but yeah, those are just a few.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right on the money that it's because of that love for the original series that really gives us the chance to breathe life into another attempt at it. If studios don't go in kind of realizing that and honoring that, we can tell as fans. We can smell that a mile away, and we're not going to be nice. No. That's the bottom line is, yes, if you think it was done incorrectly the first time, fine. If you think it can be done better, it probably can. Any work of art, like I said, it's abandoned. It's never finished.
Exactly.
But honor the original, honor the fans who are here giving you a chance and sticking with you and want to see it done better, want to see it done well. Don't just throw us by the wayside because you could have the opportunity for sparkly new fans. Like we're the ones who want this baby, and you have to honor that.
Amen.
I don't know.
Amen.
I don't know.
No, you're saying everything right. I agree. Like,
so yeah, those are some of our thoughts on some pretty cool remakes, some head scratching remakes. But you know, we want to know, which do you prefer? Are you a die-hard original stan, or do you think the remake did a better job? What remakes stand out to you? Finally, what did we miss in our list of criteria for a successful remake? As always, we'd love to hear from you either in the comments on the YouTube version of this episode or via email at theanimenpodcast@gmail.com. But, you know, as always, thanks for listening.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. We appreciate it.
We do.
Yes. Before we go, and what are we watching right now?
Okay, so I'm continuing on with Magical Destroyers, and I just want to name drop it. That's kind of the purpose of this. It's still amazing. We talked a lot about it in the 2023 spring lineup. You know, if you haven't started watching it, the premise is, you know, it does a lot of like kind of poking fun at some of the tropes from kind of the early 2000s of anime. So if you're as old as I am, you know, you're going to love this one. It even does like video game references. But the point is, like, it's a really loving and joking look at weeb culture specifically from that era, but it kind of branches out to magical girls as well. So I highly, highly, highly recommend. You know, the first few episodes were really good, and it didn't, you know, it's still continuing to exceed my expectations. So please, that's on Crunchyroll. Give that a watch. And then also, I have kind of my series that I watch every year, Log Horizon. You know, one of my favorite isekai anime. It's brilliant. That's just a really fun one to watch. I'm playing through the Dot Hack series on my video game YouTube channel, and that is very much in a similar vein. So if you like stuff like that, Log Horizon is really good.
Didn't they, because I know you're doing the Hack series right now, didn't they attempt to do like anime Dot Hack series?
They did. So the video games kind of focus on different snippets of the overarching narrative. And then there's anime that kind of predate both video game series. So one thing that they kind of did is they kind of wove the video game series into the overarching narrative, which is really cool because, you know, it requires a lot of homework, kind of getting the context and the entire narrative. You can just play the video games, but it's a much richer experience if you kind of go and watch. They have like OVAs that accompany each video game for the first series. So there's Dot Hack Liminality that comes with each part of the original series. So you get the game and you get an OVA to watch, kind of looking at the real world side of things while the other players are in the game. While you're playing the game. And I think I'd love to see more video games like that kind of engage with this overarching narrative that's kind of covered in manga adaptations, in anime adaptations, just kind of this whole universe that isn't just kind of encompassed within the video game, but that's just one part of this whole experience. And that's why Dot Hack is slowly taking over my life, is because it's not just a video game.
It's a lifestyle.
It truly is.
I think that's a cool premise, because I know like the Marvel side of Disney is doing something like that, where it's like, instead of watching the movies, you also have to watch the shows. And I know going forward with the DC side of things with Warner Brothers, they're going to start doing like video game tie-ins to the movies along with comic books. So I think that's a really cool idea you can still enjoy like different facets of that genre, whether it's video game to an anime. That's a really cool idea, and I'm glad that we're seeing it, at least with the, I guess, Hollywood side. But like, I think more anime should be doing that. And I mean, obviously Sword Art Online's a good example. I mean, we get like a game a year with that. Dragon Ball Z, I mean, that's to death, you know, with fighting games.
Right.
But like, I really like that idea with Dot Hack, where you could still enjoy the anime and like, it's like you said, more homework for you, but you'll greater appreciate that story.
Yeah.
Really cool idea. Mine, I have 3. I'm actually going to get rid of one because it will probably bleed into our next topic next episode. So I'm going to get rid of it entirely. Sailor Moon Crystal. I finished it. It's all done. Wow, what a journey. Not like I have a little bit more to say, but it's probably going to be the same things as I was reiterating in the last episode. 90s era, just style story. They faithfully have done the at least the source material as far as I'm aware, because like I said, I've only watched a couple of the 90s ones of episodes here and there. My wife's more heavily into Sailor Moon, so she's more aware of the OG version. So we both watched Crystal, for the first time fresh. But yeah, and then they also had a couple movies so far. They're finishing up the last movie in 2 parts that will kind of cover the last arc. That should be coming out this year. Really good. I really appreciate, especially from the same production team. It feels like they've improved. I mean, when I got to season 3 of Sailor Moon, I was like, okay, I'm all for this now. I feel like they know what they're doing. And like they even improved some things like the sailor transformations. And my one gripe is that they still use the same spell over and over, but that's just me. Like Sailor Moon just using the same spell over and over in season 3. I was like, does she not have a different spell? I mean, all these other girls are using like 2 different spells. I just felt like it was a little lazy, but I was like, okay. I'm still enjoying the story for what it is, but that's my thoughts. We're going to probably be moving on to the OG Sailor Moon. Like I was saying, they redubbed it and did not censor it. So I will probably have more thoughts on that at a later date when we get to Sailor Moon. We had to take a break because I was like, there's just so much Sailor Moon. I don't know if I can sit through, because I think the OG is 5 seasons long and several movies. And as much as I would love to watch more, I can only handle so much of that at the same time. And we're going through our spring anime still right now, which bleeds into my next one. I just want to reiterate my love for this series again, and for people to watch it out. And I'm begging you to watch it at some point. Oshinoko is so good. I'm still trying to avoid telling you as much spoilers as possible. What I love about this series, and again, it's dealing with a lot of stuff in the industry of being into filmmaking, being an idol. It dealt with a serious topic in an episode or 2 ago about ego surfing, which is a thing that a lot of people do. If you don't know what it is, it's basically you looking yourself up on the internet and seeing the comments flood in, whether that's good or bad. And a lot of mental health, apart from that, and dealing with maybe thoughts of suicide. It's so interesting to see the dark side of this industry, especially it was dealing with like reality live dating show. It was really cool to see that side and what they go through, at least in Japan, when it comes to that stuff, and the hate and the love that you see online of these people that are dealing with bullying, cyberbullying to an extent, and what kind of toll does that have on that person that's so young too. I just found that really interesting. I'm trying to avoid less spoilers as possible, but that's just like a huge topic they just went through. And I really appreciate seeing that kind of thing in an anime form, because I'd never seen that side before. And like they even talk later on, like earlier on in the show, they talk about a manga based like web series that was adapted from manga to a short like 6-episode run online, and how it affects the manga artist and seeing their work come to life, whether that's in live action, of course, or whatnot. It's so interesting. And I urge people, I think this is the best anime this year. And when we get to our anime of the year debate by the end of the year, which we will be, I haven't talked to you about it yet, but we should do something like that.
Yes.
At the end of the year, and have our own debate and our own voting and debating on what's the best anime this year. So, watch Oshinoko. That is on not Crunchyroll, High Dive. That's on High Dive. Sailor Moon Crystal is on Hulu. I watched it on Hulu, and I think I watched the movies on Netflix, and then I realized all of Crystal is also on Netflix. So it's on Netflix and Hulu. Check those out. I don't think, did you say where you were watching Magical Destroyers or Log Horizon?
So Magical Destroyers is on Crunchyroll. Log Horizon, Parts of it are, at least last time I checked, parts of it are on Crunchyroll and parts of it are on High Dive. And some might also be on Hulu, so I would check there as well. But you can definitely find pieces of it in the different streaming locations.
Perfect. Check those out, guys. Let's get the heck out of here. Where can people find you when we aren't talking about anime?
So when we're not talking about anime, I have a YouTube channel, Raven Rook, and I do a lot of horror content, indie, big titles as well. And then I'm currently working through the first Dot Hack series, and then the next one is slated as well. I've been doing a lot more with my PS2 since I got a capture card. So do all of that, do reviews of the games I play as well. So, if you're not into playthroughs, I also just give kind of a more condensed analysis of whether I think you should play the game or not. And where can we find you?
Likewise, YouTube. I'm on YouTube. Grumble Gamers. We just are about to wrap up our Mortuary's Assistant right now, and we're moving on to the Riven point and click adventure that is the sequel to Myst with our mom. So that's fun. About to start Resident Evil 4 remake with my brother-in-law, so that's fun. You and I are slowly still going through A Way Out. We're actually almost done with that one, so look out for those. And I'm just going through some horror games right now. Paranorma Site, which we could probably talk about at a later date. Those are really fun. Really, really cool. And I just playing some indie horrors with my wife here and there. So it is a treat. So yeah, check us out over there. Also check us over at Spotify, Google Podcast. I promise we're going to have the Apple thing up and running sooner rather than later. I'm not holding it off. It's just a lot more complicated with Apple for some reason on my end. Also email us if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, ideas at the AniMENpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to read them online. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram. I think I covered it all. What's our next topic on the next episode?
It's going to be a juicy one. It's guilty pleasure anime. So that should be fun.
Yes, like I said, I had what we were watching. I had a guilty pleasure, and I have a lot of things to say about that one. So yeah, we'll talk about that in the next episode. I'm really excited to talk about the juicy stuff. Finally. I think we matured enough to talk about lewd stuff, right? Are we there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Finally. Well, we'll see you guys for the next one. Thank you so much for listening, watching. Please like us down below. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and we'll see you for the next episode of the AniMEN podcast. I'm Connor. I was going to say Connor. I don't know why I said that. I'm Craze.
And I'm Raven Rook.
Weebs out.
Weebs out.
I just lost my voice there for a moment.